For over 400,000 years, a species of human walked this planet that was, by every measure, a success story. They were tall, they were powerful, they hunted animals 10 times their size with weapons they carved by hand. They spread from the forests of sub-Saharan Africa to the cold river valleys of northern Europe, adapting to everything the ice ages threw at them. And then roughly 300,000 years ago, they were gone. No war, no asteroid, no mass extinction event. Just gone. Replaced somehow by two younger species that would go on to dominate the world. One of those species is us. So what happened to Homo heidelbergensis? And why does the answer keep changing every time someone digs up a new bone? The story starts with a sand pit. In the autumn of 1907, workers quarrying sand near the village of Mauer, just south of Heidelberg in Germany, pulled something out of the ground that stopped the whole operation cold. It was a jawbone, massive, thick, clearly human in shape but unlike anything belonging to a modern person. The teeth were almost too small for a jaw that heavy. It looked like someone had taken a modern human mouth and bolted it onto the skull of something much older and much more robust. A local professor named Otto Schoensack had been watching the quarry for years, convinced it would eventually turn up something important. When he got his hands on that jaw, he knew exactly what he was looking at. Something that didn't fit any known species. He classified it as Homo heidelbergensis, and for decades that single jaw was basically all science had to work with. But here's the strange part. As the 20th century went on and more fossils turned up across Africa and Europe, researchers began to realize that heidelbergensis wasn't some fringe curiosity. This species was everywhere. Skulls in Zambia, stone tools in England, butchered animal bones in Spain, a trail of evidence stretching across 2 continents and hundreds of thousands of years. Whatever Homo heidelbergensis was, it wasn't rare. It wasn't isolated. It was one of the most widespread and long-lived human species that ever existed, which makes the fact that they vanished all the more unsettling. To understand what made heidelbergensis remarkable, you have to understand the world they lived in, and it was not a kind one. The Middle Pleistocene was a period of wild climate swings. Glaciers advanced and retreated across Europe in long, grinding cycles. Temperatures could plummet for thousands of years, then warm back up just long enough for forests to creep north before the ice came back. The animals that survived in this world were enormous, straight-tusked elephants, giant deer with antlers wider than a car, rhinoceroses built like tanks, and heidelbergensis hunted them. At a site called Box Grove on what's now the southern coast of England, archaeologists found something that reshapes how we think about these people. Hundreds of beautifully crafted flint hand axes, scattered among the butchered remains of horses and rhinoceroses. The cut marks on the bones tell a clear story. These weren't scavengers picking over leftovers, they were hunters and organized ones working together to bring down animals that would kill a lone human in seconds. But what's even more impressive showed up at a site 600 miles to the east. In the mid-1990s, excavators at a coal mine near the German town of Schöningen uncovered a set of wooden spears preserved in waterlogged sediment for roughly 300,000 years. These weren't crude sticks sharpened to a point. They were engineered, balanced for throwing with the weight distribution of a modern javelin. Whoever made them understood projectile physics at an intuitive level. Think about that for a moment. 300,000 years ago, a species of human that most people have never heard of was manufacturing throwing weapons sophisticated enough that an engineer today would recognize the design logic. And there's growing evidence they did more than just hunt. Several heidelbergensis sites show traces of controlled fire use. Some researchers have argued for evidence of simple shelters built from branches and weighted down with stones. At a site in southern France called Terra Amata, excavators found what looked like post holes and hearths arranged in oval patterns, possibly the earliest known constructed dwellings, though that interpretation is still debated. Then there's the Bodo skull, found in Ethiopia in 1976, a large, heavy heidelbergensis cranium with something disturbing etched into its surface, cut marks, deliberate ones made by stone tools concentrated around the eyes and cheeks. Someone had carefully defleshed this skull after death. Was it cannibalism, ritual mortuary practice, some kind of early symbolic behavior? Nobody knows for certain, but it suggests an inner life far more complex than we usually credit to species this old. And that complexity reaches its peak at one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites on Earth. Deep inside a limestone cave system in northern Spain, at the bottom of a 43-foot vertical shaft, lies a chamber called the Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones. Over the past 3 decades, researchers have pulled more than 7,000 fossils out of this pit, representing at least 28 individual hominins. All of them died roughly 430,000 years ago. It's the largest collection of pre-modern human fossils ever found in one place, and the circumstances are genuinely baffling. There's no evidence these people lived in the pit. No tools, no food remains, no campfire debris. The bones were deposited there somehow over what appears to be a relatively short span of time. Some researchers believe the bodies were deliberately dropped down the shaft. If that's true, it would make Cima de los Huesos the earliest known example of intentional body disposal. Not quite burial in the way we'd recognize it, but something more than just leaving your dead where they fell. A decision, a practice, maybe even a tradition. And then there's Excalibur. Among all those bones, excavators found a single hand axe made from red quartzite, a material that doesn't occur naturally anywhere near the cave. Someone carried it there on purpose. Some researchers believe it was placed with the dead intentionally, a kind of offering or grave good. If they're right, it means that 430,000 years ago, a species most people have never even heard of was engaging in behavior that we usually associate exclusively with modern humans, caring for the dead, attaching meaning to objects, thinking in symbols. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody expected. When researchers finally managed to extract ancient DNA from the Cima de los Huesos fossils, they assumed it would confirm these were heidelbergensis. Instead, the DNA told a different story. The mitochondrial DNA was closer to denisovans, a mysterious human species known mostly from a single cave in Siberia. Later, nuclear DNA analysis showed strong Neanderthal affinities. So what were these people? Heidelbergensis? Early Neanderthals? Something in between? The answer increasingly is that 400,000 years ago, the lines between human species weren't clean at all. They were blurred, braided, tangled together in ways we're only beginning to sort out. And that tangle is exactly what makes the disappearance of Heidelbergensis so hard to pin down. Sometime around 300,000 years ago, Homo heidelbergensis stops showing up in the fossil record, not everywhere at once, and not overnight, but steadily, site by site, continent by continent, the evidence dries up. In Europe, the fossils that come after heidelbergensis look more and more like Neanderthals, heavier brow ridges, more robust body plans tuned for cold. In Africa, the skulls start looking more like us, rounder, higher foreheads, lighter bone structure, flatter faces. It's as if heidelbergensis didn't go extinct in the traditional sense. It branched. The European populations drifted toward what we'd eventually call Neanderthal. The African populations drifted toward what we'd eventually call Homo sapiens. And the parent species, the one that had been everywhere for hundreds of thousands of years, simply ceased to exist as a distinct category. But that neat story has problems, big ones. First, not everyone agrees heidelbergensis is even a real species. Some paleoanthropologists argue the category is a dumping ground, a label slapped onto any middle Pleistocene fossil that doesn't fit neatly into Homo erectus, Neanderthal, or sapiens. The fossils grouped under heidelbergensis are wildly variable. A skull from Zambia looks almost nothing like a jaw from Germany. Some researchers want to split the group into multiple species. Others want to fold it into existing ones. Second, the timeline doesn't quite work. If heidelbergensis simply evolved into Neanderthals and sapiens through geographic isolation, you'd expect a clean split around 300,000 years ago. But the Cima de los Huesos DNA suggests the lineages were diverging much earlier, possibly 600,000 years ago or more, which means heidelbergensis might have coexisted with its own descendants for hundreds of thousands of years. And third, There's the question of what happened to the populations that didn't neatly evolve into something else. Not every Heidelbergensis group lived in Europe or East Africa. What about the ones in between? The ones in southern Africa, in the Levant, in Southeast Asia? Did they all independently evolve into something new, or did some just die out, replaced by newer, more adaptable species moving into their territory? The honest answer is that nobody knows. Not yet. Here's what's quietly remarkable about all of this. Even though Heidelbergensis vanished as a species, they didn't vanish entirely. If the branching model is correct, then every Neanderthal who ever lived carried their legacy forward, and so does every living human. When you look at it that way, Heidelbergensis didn't go extinct at all. They became us. They became the Neanderthals. They became the Denisovans. Their genetic material got reshuffled and passed along through hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, migration, and interbreeding. But the species itself, the people who carved those perfect hand axes at Boxgrove, who threw those engineered spears at Schoningen, who maybe, just maybe, carried a red stone axe down into a dark pit to lay beside their dead, those people are gone. Their specific way of being human, their particular way of seeing the world and surviving in it, that doesn't exist anymore. And maybe that's the strangest part of this whole story. We might be their descendants. We carry fragments of their biology in every cell of our bodies, but we will never know what it was like to be them. We'll never know what they thought when they looked up at the stars, or if they thought about it at all. We'll never know what that red hand axe meant to whoever carried it into the dark. All we have are the bones they left behind, and the questions those bones keep asking. If you want to go deeper into the story of human species that time forgot, I covered the last days of the Neanderthals in this video right here. Click it now. And if you made it this far, subscribe. There's a lot more buried history to dig up.